that the Sermon on the Mount is to the New Testament as what the Ten Commandments are to the Old Testament. And so if you think about it, the Ten Commandments are really going to be kind of a summation of what the Old Testament law is. And you can find the applications of the Ten Commandments all the way through the Old Testament. The Sermon on the Mount is kind of the same way in terms of the principles that we're going to be looking at for the next 12 weeks. You can take a look at plenty of places all the way through the New Testament, and you can just see application after application, parallel after parallel. And so for that reason, I think it's really important for us to get a very good grasp of what the Sermon on the Mount really is, and to really understand what it is, because once we start to understand what the Sermon on the Mount is, then we can kind of have a better understanding about what our discipleship is and how we can serve the Lord. And so that's why, I've entitled this study Discipleship 101, because it's going to be talking about some very basic things about discipleship. So, okay. What we're going to be doing is, before, when we've been doing the questions and everything, answering the questions, I do the talking, then I say, do you have any questions? And then, because I've been trying to record those. I'm not really going to be worrying about that so much. We are recording it. I am going to be, putting it on YouTube and sending the links out to people who weren't here. But I don't even know if I'm going to be making them public or not. They may just be private links. And so the point is just simply this: if you've got a question or a comment, just raise your hand, get my attention. And Chloe, you can switch the microphone to pick up the comments and stuff. But we're not going to really worry so much about protocol, so to speak. All right, we just be our goofy selves and don't really care about what's going to be looking like on camera. Yeah, I know. I was kind of thinking about that as I said it. Okay. Let's go back to the Sermon on the Mount a little bit. Let's take a look at Matthew chapter 5. And lo and behold, I don't have my notes, so, I have to come down here. And there we go, up on the board. Matthew chapter 5. And verses 1 and 2. And also take a look or we are going to look in just a moment at the book of Luke 2, chapter 6. Okay? Okay, so in verse number 1, it says, "Now when Jesus saw the crowds, he went up to the mountain, and after he sat down, his disciples came to him. And he opened his mouth and began to teach them, saying," pause before we get into the sayings. Notice what's going on here, and that is, this is pretty early on in Jesus' ministry. And so he is seeing the large crowds. I mean, it's not so early that he isn't having a large following. It's later on about that. But when he sees the crowds, he's going to go up on the mountainside. And when he goes up on the mountainside, he actually kind of comes down. And when he comes down, he sits down, and his disciples comes to him. And so he opens his mouth, and he began to teach them. So one thing that we need to understand about the Sermon on the Mount, especially as what we see in the book of Matthew, is that this is primarily directed to disciples. It's primarily directed to us. And so when you think about, the Sermon on the Mount, who is it for? It is for us, primarily. Now, when you think about the large crowds, do you think that in this large crowds, that there's going to be some people who are lost in there? Yeah? And so, as he is primarily directing it to his disciples, there are going to be some other people that are there, that are listening in, that don't know Jesus as their Savior, that are lost. And so, there are going to be some overtones or some applications that we can make towards people who are lost. But for the most part, what we need to do is we need to look at this as far as people who are saved. Now, we've got the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew chapter 5, 6, and 7. We also have a parallel account in Luke. And so if you go and take a look at chapter 6, Luke chapter 6, and in verse number 12, it says, Luke chapter 6 and verse number 12. One of those days, Jesus went out to a mountainside to pray and spent the night praying to God. And then we see that when morning comes, he calls his disciples to him and chose 12 of them. And so those are the 12 disciples that we know about, okay? And so those names are given there. And so then when we skip on down to verse number 17, it says, he went down with them and stood on a level place. And so there in Matthew, we've got, he went up to the mountain. And then, here in Luke, we've got a level place. But understand, he goes up to the mountain, right? And he prays. And then the next morning, he names the 12 disciples. And then he comes down to this level place, okay? So in Matthew, where it says, when Jesus saw the crowds, he went up to the mountain. Yeah, he did that. And then we have, a day or two after that, his disciples came to him. After he sat down, his disciples came to him, and he opened his mouth teaching them. What we see here is that he went down with him and stood on a level place in the book of Luke, chapter 6, that is. A large crowd of his disciples was there, and a great number of people from all over Judea, from Jerusalem, and from the coast of Tyre and Sidon, who had come to hear him and to be healed of all of their diseases. Those troubled by evil spirits were cured, and the people all tried to touch him because the power was coming from him and healing them all. Looking at his disciples, he said. And so again, here's more the case, that we've got this crowd of people. But the main focus that Jesus is giving to all of this is to his disciples. Now there's other people there, but the main focus that all of this is going to be his disciples. Now, what we see in Luke and what we see in Matthew is that his sermon starts out with the Beatitudes, is what they're called. And the Beatitudes is just a fancy word for blessings. What we see in the book of Luke is that not only do we have some blessings that are there, but we also have some woes is there as well. And so, there's that idea about, you can apply these to lost people. But if you go on over to the book of Matthew, chapter 5, again, what we see, where is it? There it is. It was already up there. Matthew chapter 5, we see all of these different Beatitudes. Verse number 3, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. By the way, how many of you ever heard that before? Okay. Man, that's people who have never even cracked open a Bible before have probably heard that one. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the gentle. Other translations will translate this as meek. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Or blessed are the gentle, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called sons of God. Blessed are those who have been persecuted for the sake of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Now, when we look at these, you can see that they pretty much all kind of follow a certain formula, so to speak, okay? And that is, first of all, we've got this word here, blessed. Is it blessed or is it blessed? Blessed? Okay. Hi, Simon. Hi. We'll talk later. Okay. All right. Okay, so blessed. What does it mean to be blessed, by the way? What is that? Everybody wants to be blessed, right? Okay. Most people want to be blessed. Some people want to be cursed, but most people want to be blessed.
Is it like favor shown on here?
Okay, favor. All right. That does work, by the way. Okay, good things in your life? Okay.
I know some translations have it, happy or the...
Happy, yeah. That works. Okay.
From God, right?
It is something that comes from God. Yeah. Okay. So this is the way the people of this day thought about blessings. What Shannon said is favor. that is part of it. And as far as from God goes, that is also a part of it too. What they viewed it as, if you had favor from God, then therefore you were blessed. Therefore you were prosperous. As a matter of fact, that's just the way that they viewed it commonly viewed it in Jesus' day. The way they commonly viewed it was that all of the material things that you have in your life are due to the blessings of God. And so therefore the most prosperous people in life, generally speaking, are the people who are the most blessed by the Lord, and they have the Lord's favor upon them. And so therefore, because they have the Lord's favor, they have the Lord's grace, they're happy, okay? Somebody who is blessed at that particular time would have been somebody who would have been prosperous and just not having any cares or worries of the world, not any cares or worries of life. And if you think about, the way that people oftentimes view being blessed, isn't that pretty much the way that they kind of view things? Is, I don't have the same cares and worries of life that other people do, right? And I think that that's the way that a lot of people understand being blessed. But the question is, number one, who really is blessed? And number two, how do people really get to be blessed, right? Because when you stop and think about it, sometimes the richest people in the world are not necessarily the ones that are the blessed, right? And as a matter of fact, if you really want to be honest with with things, just because you have good things happen to you in your life, it doesn't necessarily mean that it is a good thing, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that you're blessed. It could be something like, oh, yay, I won the lottery. Okay, well, are you still going to be saying that 2 years from now? It seems like a lot of people who win the lottery, they are miserable and they say, you know what, I was more happy before I'd won the lottery than after I won the lottery. I don't know. I've never won the lottery. Can't talk from personal experience. But when you think about blessings, that's kind of the way that things go. Now, is that what Jesus is talking about, though? Okay. Back to our formula here. The first thing that we've got is blessed. Okay. And then after that, in all of these verses here, what we've got is we've got a description. Okay? A description of who is blessed. Notice what he says here. He says, blessed are poor in spirit. Blessed are those who mourn. Blessed are the gentle. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. Blessed are the merciful. Blessed are the pure in heart. Blessed are the peacemakers. Blessed are those who have been persecuted. And so in all of these different Beatitudes here, do you see how all of those are descriptions that are there, right? You've got a poor. And isn't it interesting that, when we say that blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven, a lot of people have heard that before, and a lot of people have heard that wrong, right? What do a lot of people hear when they hear that, or a lot of people think about when they think about that?
Just the poor in general.
Just the poor in general. People oftentimes leave that part out. Blessed are the poor, okay? But that's actually not what Jesus was talking about at all, was he? In fact, he's mentioned poor in spirit. And when you look at all of these other descriptions here, don't you see that Jesus really has a spiritual slant on all of these, right? These descriptions of people are descriptions of people in a spiritual sense, okay? And so when we talk about blessings, and when we talk about how people in that day and time viewed them as prosperity, we need to understand that Jesus is not talking about just physical prosperity. In fact, as we continue on, what we're going to see is that these are spiritual things. And instead of prosperous are the poor in spirit, what we need to say is spiritually prosperous are the poor in spirit. Okay, because that's really what what we're talking about. Okay, now, after the description, what we've got is a reason, which shown by the word for, and then that reason is given. Okay? And so when we go back over here, what we see is that blessed are the poor in spirit. So why are these people who are poor in spirit blessed? Because theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Right? The same way with this. Blessed are those who mourn. Why are the people who are mourning blessed? Because if you think about it, mourning doesn't really go with people's common thought about what blessing is, you know. Instead, you would think, oh, well, blessing is somebody who's blessed is going to be somebody who is happy, somebody who is joyful, somebody who has been favored, but yet Jesus is saying are those who mourn, okay? Well, it's because of the reason they will be comforted. And do you notice how the reason of the blessing goes along with the description, okay? And that is, you know, the poor in spirit. Theirs is the kingdom of heaven. That's the reason why they're blessed. Those who mourn, they're going to be comforted. It goes along with it. And that's the reason why they're blessed. And then so on and so forth. They will inherit the earth. They will be satisfied. They will receive mercy. They will see God. They will be called sons of God. And theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Okay? Now, did you notice that in verse number 3, we've got is, and in verse number 10, we've got is. That's there, right? For theirs is the kingdom. Theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Same thing. But in all the others here, what we've got is a change of tense. We've got will, okay? And so he starts out by saying is, but then starting in verse number 4, all the way down through verse number 9, we've got this is something that's going to be occurring in the future, all right? And so it makes sense that, you know, when somebody is saved, they are part of the kingdom at that time, all right? But understand that these reasons for blessings mostly are going to be something that's in the future, and in the future sense, mainly heavenly rewards in the Lord's kingdom. And so that's why this is something that is a spiritual blessing. It's a spiritual, and these people are spiritually prosperous. Does that make sense? Anybody got any questions about that? Okay, you ready to do some work? Okay, we're going to take a look at our sheet. If I can take a look at our sheet. There we go. All right. So here we go. Take a moment, and don't cheat. Well, you can kind of cheat. But, you know, go through here, and we've got a spiritual condition all the way over here, and then we've got an eternal reward that is matched up with it, okay? And so, poor in spirit, you know, why were the poor in spirit considered blessed? It's because they had the kingdom, right? Okay? So take a minute and go down through there. If you need a pen, we'll get you a pen. But go down through there and just kind of match up the spiritual condition with the eternal reward. Okay? So I'll let you do that. Who needs a pen?
What are the giant lines for?
Giant lines? Well, okay, so we're going to talk about that in just a second. Okay? If you want to work ahead like Quentin, the giant lines are, what does that mean? You know, where it says, have the kingdom. What do you think that means? We're going to go back through there and talk about it in just a second, but that's what the giant lines are for. All right, how are we doing? Are we about done? Okay. Let's go ahead and talk about them then. All right, so poor in spirit, we already have that one, right? We've got, have the kingdom. And there's two of them that have the kingdom, right? We go on down to the very last one, those who are persecuted because of righteousness also have the kingdom. Okay, what about those who mourn? Okay, those who mourn are those that are comforted. Okay? So when we talk about who will be comforted, what do you think that means? Okay. I mean, that's going to be the ultimate comfort, isn't it?
No more mourning.
Okay. Well, right. I mean, when you have a state of no more mourning, can that be at a certain point in our Christian lives? Well, yeah, it can be, can it? That is that when we start to mourn over spiritual things, then the Holy Spirit does comfort us. But when you think about what that ultimate comforting is going to take place, it's going to be taking place in heaven, in the millennial kingdom. And when we start to think about that, then guess what happens for our comfort now? We have a little bit more comfort, right? It's like, man, things are terrible, horrible, awful, but I know that one day it's going to be a better place. And so because of that, it can help us right now. Okay. What about the meek or gentle? What is the eternal reward that goes along with those that inherit the earth? Okay. Which doesn't really make a whole lot of sense now, does it? Try telling that to Putin. Hey, Putin, did you know that it's the gentle that's going to inherit the earth? I don't think he's going to go along with that too much. He's going to disagree with it. But, what was Jesus talking about as far as the gentle or the meek? And by the way, meek is not the same as weak. Okay? Moses was described as the meekest man on the earth at that time. Now, you look at Moses and what he did and the boldness that he had going to Pharaoh. Of course, he had to take a little bit of coaxing from the Lord to get there. But once he got there, that was pretty bold, right? And then all the things that he did for the Israelites, how he stood up to the Israelites for all their disobedience and everything like that. He was not a weak man, correct? But he was a meek man. So meek does not mean weak. What does meek mean?
I have a whole list.
Whole list?
Well, I studied that word.
What's that?
I think it's humility.
Okay, it's going to start with humility. Right?
Yes, sir.
I have a word study.
Humility towards who, Chloe?
People around you.
Well, it's got to start with the humility towards God. Okay, because, why are we humble with other people? Well, we're humble with other people because of our humility towards God. So if we're humble towards God, then we therefore are going to be humble towards other people. Now, why are we humble towards other people? We're humble to other people because we know that's what God wants. And so, if somebody does something to us, whereas we want to react and we have the power and the means to react, we don't react. And the question is, why don't we react? Why are we gentle instead or meek instead?
We know it's not our place to judge the situation.
We know that it's the Lord's authority, and we're putting ourselves under the Lord's authority, and that's what meek is.
And that's two of the things that I have to describe are showing mildness or a quietness of nature.
Uh-huh.
And that is kind of that humble approach to a situation. Being mild-tempered about it, mild, quiet with your nature in general, just to ease a situation.
Yeah. So when are the meek going to inherit the earth? It certainly isn't now, is it? No. But in the millennial kingdom, then all of the everything is going to be the Lord's, and we are going to share in that inheritance. Okay? Okay. The next one, those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. What matches up with that one? Be filled. And that really just goes along with it, you know. You're hungry. What are you hungry for? Physical food, physical water?
God's Lord.
Hunger and thirst for righteousness, right? You know. And so those that hunger and thirst for righteousness, they will be filled. So what do you think that means as far as, you know, this reward goes?
Do what God wants. Follow Jesus.
Okay.
Learn His word.
Okay. And so it's a case of, you know, we realize our own sin, and we hunger and thirst for something better. We hunger and thirst for righteousness. Okay? And so when we do that, then the Lord does empower us and enable us with His Spirit, with His grace and His mercy, to get us to do better than we are. But are we ever going to get to a point in our life where we are completely filled in this life? No, because we're always going to be sinners, right? And we're always going to have struggles with sin. We're always going to have, you know, struggles with conscience and guilt and everything like that. Even though with the Lord's grace and mercy, we can go on. So when is that really going to take place? In heaven. So, you know, it's another one of those cases of here is the reward that is an eternal reward. But the more that we understand that, the more that we understand what we've got right now. So it's kind of dual purpose there. The merciful, what is paired up with merciful? Receive mercy. Now, how does that work? People who are merciful is going to receive mercy. Okay. So the people that show mercy are the people who realize that God has been merciful to them. Okay. What happens when we as the Lord's disciples choose not to be merciful towards people?
We are sold into what happens to the debtor.
Okay. And then in the parable, hi. How are you doing, buddy? You want to come see me?
Us and our family are
Yeah, now that is just part of the parable itself. But the point is just simply of the parable is that if we are not merciful to other people, then God's not going to be very happy with us, right? Now, as far as His children goes, He's still going to love us. But, you know, everybody who's a parent understands that there are times that you still love your children, but you are aggravated as heck at them, right? Okay? And the same can be true with the Lord, you know, as far as the Lord is not very happy. He's not very pleased with us. The main thing is, again, you know, we mainly receive mercy in heaven, in the millennial kingdom, okay? All right, pure in heart. What about the pure in heart? What is with the pure in heart? See God. Man, that's an interesting thing, isn't it? How does pure in heart and seeing God go hand in hand together? Has anybody seen God? No. Why hasn't anybody seen God? He can't look on sin, right?
As long
And
as we have our human sinful nature here on earth, we can't be near Him.
we won't be physically near God, right? But, you know, for those that are pure in heart in this life, you know, I guess there's going to be some people that are going to be closer to the Lord later on and, you know, be able to see Him physically then. But at the same time, you know, you can look at it in a spiritual sense now, right? And that is that if you are pure in your heart, then you're going to have a better understanding with spiritual things. Okay? What about the peacemakers? Got the last one, right? Be called the sons of God. All right. Now, this isn't being the sons of God. This is being called the sons of God. How does somebody become a son of God? Yeah, when we accept Jesus Christ, then what it says in John chapter 1 is that we have the right or the authority to be called the children of God. But this is being called sons of God. In other words, this is what we are identified as being. And so if we are peacemakers, and this word peacemaker can also be translated as peace doer, because you cannot make peace if you really want to be technical about it. You can do peace. But if somebody wants to be at odds with you, they're going to be at odds with you. And there's a lot of times there ain't a whole lot that you can do about it. If they're going to be at odds with you, they're going to be at odds with you. The best thing that you can do to be a peacemaker is to be a peace doer. Does that make sense? And the more that we are peace doers, then the more that people see peace in us, and the more that people recognize, hey, they have a relationship with God. They are sons of God. Okay? Okay, so do y'all see how all of that works? Right? Okay, go to the next question then. All right, read Matthew chapter 5, verses 11 and 12. What change did Jesus make in whom he was addressing, and why do you think he did that? So, if we go on down to verse 11 and 12, what we see is that it says, "Blessed are you when people insult you and persecute you and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward in heaven is great, for in this same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you." So, what about the change into whom he was addressing in all this? Right? Do you see the change? So he's saying, blessed are those, blessed are those, most of those, right? When you get down to verse number 10, or verse 11, what does he change it to? Blessed are you. So, before, this is just kind of an ambiguity towards the prophets. Is that a word? Probably not, but it works. It's ambiguous to the prophet, to the disciples. But now it is, blessed are you, right? You disciples who are sitting there listening. Now, when you look at verse number 11, about blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of who you are as a Christian, that doesn't sound very good, does it? As a matter of fact, that sounds just awful, right? Okay, so how is that blessing? What do you think?
Because they told about Jesus, the same thing.
They,
He's the Son of God.
well, more to the point, that's what they said and did to the prophets. Okay? Now, we don't understand that, to the people who lived back then, the prophets were like superheroes, They were people that were heroes. I mean, we just love the prophets. And it's like, if people do this to you, then you can consider yourself blessed because they did the same thing to those heroic people back then. Okay? Now, other question. What point do you think Jesus was making to the disciples? Does it sound like having a blessed life? Well, it doesn't. But why do you think Jesus was trying to tell this to the disciples? What's going to happen? Right? And I think that a lot of times if we're thinking, oh, well, a blessed life is, things that are good, things that are wonderful, things that are cushy-cozy, and then all of a sudden when we hit that, then what do we have a tendency to want to do? Run away. Or say, God, what's wrong? Right? Why, God, why? Why me, God? Or what am I doing wrong? Well, actually, it's not what you're doing wrong. As a matter of fact, it's what you're doing right. Right? Okay. Last part, taking it further, seeing how this can relate to you. Are you blessed? Well, if we're saved, then yeah, we are blessed. And more to the point, if we are following the Lord, then we are more blessed. Right? If we are doing these descriptions that are there, it's even more so. And so, the number one thing that we need to think about is if we're saved. And if we are saved, then the number two thing that we need to think about is if we are following the Lord. Okay? So, question number one, now that you've looked at this passage, does it change your view of what God's blessings are? What do you think? I mean, it would have changed the way that the other disciples viewed it, didn't it? Because they were thinking God's blessings would have been or physical. And what's Jesus pointing out? Spiritual.
Why people don't understand this, not Christians, when they read and they say, what? It's nonsense.
Yeah, you're right.
People don't understand.
Do you... Go ahead, Chris.
To an extent, it's the same way today.
Mm-hmm.
People hear the prosperity gospel. They're like, yes, yeah, I want all this stuff. No, I didn't hear all about that.
Yep.
They want certain this to physical, not spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
These days, right? Because it's so comfy. They think
Yeah.
as worldly thinking.
What would Jesus say to, the prosperity gospel folks? Your true blessings are not what you're thinking of. As a matter of fact, if you think about the physical prosperity that we have, sometimes that physical prosperity is there hindering our relationship with the Lord.
And it proves, look on TV, those famous rich actors, and they commit suicides, they divorce 10 times, and they are rich, they're famous, can afford everything they want, and they're unhappy,
Yeah.
and greedy.
Yeah.
Miserable.
They are.
This proves it does not work.
That's right. Okay, number two, take another look at the blessings in the chart above. What stands out to you? As we've been going through this, so there's stuff that you go, oh man, that just really catches my eye. For me, I've always, the hungering and thirsting after righteousness, that's always caught my eye, and blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. That, for some reason, those two things always catch my eye.
What does it mean to be poor in spirit?
Poor in spirit means that you are going to recognize, in fact, I didn't talk about this, I'm glad you pointed it out. Poor in spirit means that you're going to be recognizing your poverty, your spiritual poverty, before God. Okay? And so somebody who's going to be rich in their spirit is going to be saying, I don't have need of anything. Right? Somebody who's poor in spirit is going to be saying, I am in need of everything spiritually. So somebody who's poor in spirit is going to be recognizing the sin in their own life. They're going to be recognizing the deficit in their life in the Lord. Yep. Yeah. Somebody who's, and by somebody who recognizes their poverty spiritually, oh, you want down now? Poverty spiritually speaking, then they're somebody who is going to be blessed because they're going to be saved, and theirs is going to be the kingdom of heaven.
Those Pharisees, they didn't recognize it.
Exactly.
Because they say, we know everything, we know God, we are children of Abraham and Moses,
Yeah, we are spiritually rich.
Yes.
We are not poor in spirit. Chloe, did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. Well, when you look at this chart, and there's some things that stand out to you, maybe they're standing out for you for a reason. Maybe that's something the Lord is wanting you to kind of focus on in your life. Maybe there's some things in this chart that you're kind of thinking, you know what, I need help with that. I'm not doing things as good as what I should be doing. And so, when you're looking at this, and this is going down to question number 3, is if the Lord is impressing you to put some of these things into your Christian life, then let's just make it a point this week to do it. Okay? So take a look at these Beatitudes and just saying, Lord, am I being the kind of peacemaker that I should? Am I hungering and thirsting after righteousness as I should? Am I being pure in heart as I should? Okay. All right, you guys got any last minute questions or comments about any of this?